One reason I love coming out and being among the agents because I was one. And I think the greatest thing we do is the impact we make on the local level. But I also know we need some administrators to push some budgets forward and do the political side of it and help move our agenda as an agency. And there's been some challenges doing that. And I think a couple things I want to share with you to think about. And the first one is, and we've talked to ag commodity groups about this, one of the greatest challenges we have in Texas and the United States is ag literacy. Or let me put it this way, ag illiteracy. People don't know and understand and appreciate how food ends up on their plate. In Texas, we have a population of 26 million people. Almost 24 million of those live in 7 population centers. It's a challenge for us for them to understand. And if you look at the outpouring and calling we saw from the wildfires that took place here, it was rural America that answered that call because they understood. It wasn't the urban areas that were stepping forward. In fact, it amazed me, it was barely even a blip on the national news scene what was taking place here. Even with the loss of life and the loss of property and loss of livestock, it was not a national agenda. There's a lot of other things that were national agendas, but it wasn't what was taking place in the ag community. But even though we have a more urban population, what's interesting about Texas, we still have 3 million people that live in what we define as rural areas, which means we are the largest rural state in the country. And the challenge we have at Extension is how do you balance the urbanness of what we have versus the rural network of what we do. And I would argue that if the Extension office was moved out of rural communities, you would lose a great resource that opens opportunities for education to you. And I spent a lot of time trying to communicate that. And if you've ever been to Austin or had the privilege of being at the Capitol, you understand now there's a whole lot more wingtip shoes walking in Austin making policy than there are cowboy boots. And it's very important we have people like Representative King that understands what's important for us, that we have a strong, loud voice. But we also have to deal with the misinformation about agriculture and what agriculture looks like today. Do you realize that 97% of farms are still family-owned farms? Now, they may be incorporated for tax purposes. They're family-owned farms. But what do urban people think? I'm not worried about agriculture. It's those muddy, greedy corporations that run all of agriculture. Well, that is not true. Do you realize 1 out of every 3 acres of production in the state of Texas is used for exports? And we all know what the cattle industry means in the 150 miles around Amarillo in the beef supply for this country. And we all know that there's some benefits to GMOs. There's going to be benefits to cloning, and there's benefits to crossbreeding, things that other people have captured our voice. And the gentleman that said the prayer this morning captured it well. We are the original stewards. We are the original conservationists. And we've allowed people to take that voice out of agriculture and recapture it for their own purposes. And we have a mandate to take that voice back. And so Extension has started a new initiative called Path to the Plate. And we want people to understand how food ends up on their plate and the value of agriculture and what we do. And unfortunately, we are victims of our own success. In the United States today, less than 8% of our disposable income goes to putting food on your table on a monthly basis. The next closest country is Germany, almost 12%. And if you look at other countries that we think are developed countries, when you go to France and some countries like that, it can be 25 to 30%. Think of how America would be different if we spent 30% of our disposable income on food and not 8%. And then you go to developing countries and it's even higher. It could be 90% of your disposable income goes to put food on your plate every day. We are victims of our own success. We have people that are spoiled that go in the grocery store and they can get anything they want off the shelf and not worry about, is it going to be here tomorrow? We have got to let them understand the value of agriculture and what we invest in agriculture, in research, and in teaching and extension work is vital to keep that kind of system strong and vibrant and moving forward. So you're going to hear a lot about from Extension Path to the Plate. We're just now rolling it out. We're getting county agents to be champions for agriculture, and we're going to recapture that voice and let people understand what agriculture does. But the other part we have to be aware of is we've got to reestablish the positive connection between agriculture, health, and nutrition. In Texas this year, this is the first year our spending on state general fund dollars surpasses education and transportation to take care of the health needs of Texas. We are spending more now on health, over 40% of the state budget on health than any other section or segment of state government. And what's amazing about that is 80% of the diseases we're trying to address, we call chronic diseases, are preventable chronic diseases. We're talking about hypertension or high blood pressure. We're talking about diabetes. We're talking about obesities. We're thinking of complications of your lifestyle. We can address those. And if we're spending 40%, better than 40% of the state budget to address these health issues, who better than agriculture to talk about what we do and the value? And I was sharing last night with Mike in the Beef Checkoff program. Last year, a research report came out and talked about the value of animal protein in your diet as you age. The popular media does not pick that up. And so it's got to be us to claim that research and make that position point. And that's why we need programs like the Beef Checkoff and the marketing they're doing, because if we can, by any means at all, get the animal protein market of China opened up, I think we'll see a different day and time for livestock production in this area and probably all the United States. It's going to be an incredible time for us. But how do you do that? You show there's a value to that. Well, I've had the opportunity this last year now to serve as chair of our National Extension Committee working on the Farm Bill. And if you read very much and pay attention to society, there's a book not that long ago, maybe 8, 9 years ago now, by a guy named Friedman, said the world is flat. And he was actually at a conference over in Egypt, and he understood the dynamics of world markets. And I know you got a building downtown here that trades commodities probably 24 hours a day, and Salem speaking, I think, this afternoon. So he understands that the commodity is a world commodity. And what Friedman said is, because of the internet, because of how we communicate, we have flattened the world today. But I'll tell you this, we in agriculture know this, the world is not flat. And the world will not be flat. It will not be flat because of trade embargoes. It will not be flat because of tariffs. It will not be flat because of how we work through different national agreements like NAFTA. The world is not flat. And so we have to position ourselves in agriculture to be successful no matter what the world presents to us. And part of that is the Farm Bill. Well, what's interesting about the Farm Bill is we have a Farm Bill that is 70% food bill. And so when I became chair of this committee and we looked at this, less than 3% of the Farm Bill really goes to the programs that impact agriculture producers. And it's just what we call legislative financial dust that ends up in research and extension and teaching. But what's interesting about the Farm Bill and what I advocated for is I don't believe the population in general understands it's not a farm bill, it's a food bill. It's a food security bill. When you have 70% of the Farm Bill going to nutrition education programs and what we would call food stamps. And so I talked to our legislative lobbyist in D.C. and I said, we ought to change it. And they said, no, we can't. Because if you take the food part out of the Farm Bill, what's going to happen is you lose every urban vote that has a reason to have an interest in the Farm Bill. 55% of the congressional districts in this country are defined as urban districts. We can't lose 55% of the votes and pull it out of there. So it's going to be a food and Farm Bill. We in agriculture have got to be better on the food part of that Farm Bill. And the food part, the two biggest parts of that are your food stamp assistance program and it's your school lunch program. We've got to understand the value of making sure animal protein is part of those menus and found to be acceptable, not just acceptable, but needed for nutritional value for our population. And so do we have challenges? Yes, we have challenges. And one thing I appreciate about Andy's enthusiasm and passion is we look for the opportunities to come with those challenges. And I think we have opportunities in Texas we need to take advantage of. And the first is make a movement on ag literacy and help people understand the value of what takes place in Canadian Texas to their lifestyle in Houston or Dallas, Fort Worth, or even Austin. It's very critical we do that. And I think the second value that we have is talk about healthy lifestyles and how agriculture supports healthy lifestyles. And then we're not these big evil corporations, but we're family farms. They're trying to get up every day and make a difference. With the faith, we can make a difference as we move forward. I had an opportunity to be, when I got my PhD at A&M, I went to Purdue University, and I love being at Purdue. I found out I wasn't a really good Midwesterner, but I love being at Purdue. And Purdue's interesting state is the smallest state west of the Appalachian Mountains, has 92 counties. And when Purdue was matted out, they decided they wanted a county seat to be no more than a 15-minute horse ride from anywhere in that county. So they got really small counties. And the other thing interesting about Purdue is Indiana, they don't have a straight road in that whole state. It is just chopped up, and it's very difficult to navigate. And then to even complicate it, half of the state does daylight savings time and half the state doesn't. And so half the state goes with the Chicago side, and the other half goes with the Louisville and Cincinnati side. And as an extension specialist, you don't know if you're going to be an hour early or an hour late, because you always got to ask them, is this quicker? They call it fast or slow time. And so never wanting to be late, I always made sure I just left early, and I spent a lot of times in a parking lot waiting for the appropriate time to show up. But there's a story told when I came to Indiana about a rural salesman that was out and got lost on those cross-country roads, and he went to a farmhouse and knocked on the door to get directions, and nobody answered the door. So he's walking back to his pickup truck, and he noticed a barn out there, and the barn door was cracked open and the light was on. So he went out to the barn, and there was a farmer out there milking a cow. And he said, I know you're busy, I hate to bother you, but he said, can you tell me how to get to this place? And the farmer, as we all do, helping our neighbors out, told him how to get there. And so the salesman turned around to leave, and he didn't know what time it was, fast time, slow time, any time. So he walked back and he asked that farmer again. He said, I really hate to bother you, but he said, what time is it? And by sitting on that milk stool, that farmer milked that cow and told that guy it's about 4 o'clock. So the salesman started to leave, and he said, no, I got to go back. So he went back in and he said, I hate to bother you again. How can you tell the time by milking a cow? And the farmer said, it's really pretty easy. He said, come over here and sit on this stool. So he went and sit on the stool, and he said, now pull down the teats a couple times and punch that cow on the side and cock your head, and you can see a clock up there on the barn wall. What I find out in agriculture today is we get totally consumed with that cow that's in front of us. And I believe our future success is going to come from reading what the time is on the wall and seeing how we can position ourselves to make a difference. And we are going to look different. We're going to have to act different going forward. And I hope Extension can partner with you as our producers and our agency representatives for ag and really talk about what we can do to position ourselves for future success. Because I don't know about you, but I'd hate to even try to imagine a world where rural America and what we do in agriculture is not valued in this country. Good to see you guys. Have a great conference. Andy, thanks for all of what you do.